any resistance here? I mean, did you go out and choose women for other boards? So did the men feel a little left out?
I think, Hema, you know our company, and therefore that didn't happen.
But could it happen?
It could. It could happen. And, you said something earlier, and that doesn't apply. You said something that applied to me, you said. But to be honest, that applies to the entire top management of the company. There's a great deal of trust. And therefore, the employees and the rest of the organization certainly feels what these guys won't do wrong. Whether they'll do right is a different matter. But if they have done this, it must be for a really good reason, and therefore it stops there. It stops there because the questioning, they know at any time they can question at the end of the year in the Tell Me survey, open door policy, etc. So they know that these guys won't have a facade of doing something. So therefore it works in our place, but it would have problems in other places, I guess.
Because there was a very, a very evocative comment, which was also deemed to be provocative in an earlier session, which was, could it end up being diversity before meritocracy?
Yeah.
And then that can affect the entire fabric of inclusivity.
You're right, I'll tell you, Hema, it was anecdotal, and it just jumped out when I was in the queue in Delhi last week for that security check in the airport. There was a long queue, and 4 women were brought by the security guy, "Aapka bag bhi dal do." Okay. So I stepped back and said, and they didn't move ahead. So after a while I said, I can't wait, my flight is going to go. So I went ahead. So this lady said, "What chivalry, you want to go ahead of me?" I said, "No ma'am, I was waiting." Anyway, another guy from the back is saying, "Kya chivalry, nahi sir, unka to alag queue hai na, unko jaane do udhar." This is what he said, I mean, so people are saying, okay, you have a separate queue and you want to jump our queue, you've been given all the, so there is this problem,
Yeah.
And so I had to tell her, look, I am not angry, I have also got a flight. So, but this guy behind me was saying, "Chivalry, chodo sahab, unka alag queue hai, wahan kyun nahi jate? Why didn't they go there?"
So the organization
So there is tension in all this,
Yeah. We'll come back to the questions. I'm sure everybody has lots of questions, but, park the thought there. Because, when you have these initiatives, there are what's, and you have to take them sometimes what's and all, right? So that's about organizations. What should individual women do?
I think one thing that I find women could do better at is, I think they love their job, they do a great job, but visibility of what they do, I suppose maybe they are not accustomed to, but they make great marketing people for consumers, not for themselves, maybe that's one thing where, and I'm not saying it in some negative sense, it is important to know. And I think participating in corporate programs, this is one, proactively, participating in corporate programs, which is not just to do with their area of expertise or their functional area. If you're a marketing person, participating in HR programs, because we have a lot of that in companies, CFTs and so on, and leading those or participating to begin with. The other thing that I've heard, which, now this is about boards, and I have not truly understood that they don't have enough networking into the power of organizations, and therefore they don't network too much. So, it's like these evening parties, they would probably like to stay at home rather than network. The men want to network at those events, and they get to know others, other promoters, other professionals and so on. Therefore, it's not an old boy network, but it is something like that, which they are less. And I wouldn't advocate that, but is there something else that they could do to be known as a capable, like the last inductee into the one of the boards was identified through a network, a global network, and there was a specific skill, but happened to be a lady, and therefore she was brought into the board. And she was telling me now that now she's from outside. She was telling me now that she'd like to know others like me, because she's interested. Since she's coming often to India, if she can get into other boards, why not? She said, I can learn and I can contribute. So I think that they lack. Lack in a relative sense. I don't know if it is nature or it is just that those networks are not available. I really don't know. The other things that companies can do is, I think, train people more aggressively for bigger roles and bigger jobs. That is easily done, and that can be done with specific focus, without, taking in other companies, as I said, being sensitive to the politics of it. But I think now companies and employees have accepted that this is going to be mandated, or this is going to be done more proactively.
So, Bhaskar talked about this visibility and doing great things for the company, but maybe not for themselves. And the director of Sleepless in Seattle, she has a very interesting statement. She says, for women, negotiation is like a root canal treatment. They will negotiate for everybody, including their family. But when it comes to themselves, there is a hesitation. And I think maybe it's inbuilt, but some of those things are issues and biases we have to deal with and try to overcome. The other thing I also see is that if organizations have to really encourage gender participation, fully, there are certain constraints that women work with. Of course, there is a balancing of life and home and some of those things. Men also will have to be trained on how to reward for results. I repeat this, how to reward for results and not for effort, especially men managers. And also to effectively manage time when it comes to leading women. Because many times you take the team for granted, and the person who's the hero in the last hour with you to meet a deadline becomes the real hero, whereas the lady has to leave. But it's bad management on your part, right? So time management for men managers, as well as rewarding for results rather than effort, is a very key aspect here. Okay. Also, as far as networking is concerned, I think we consciously underplay the importance of networking in professional settings as women. And I think that's to the point that Bhaskar made, that how do you get plugged into the ecosystem, not just within the organization, but also in your larger community and fraternity, because from that comes the knowledge, which helps you be a better professional. I want to stop here for a minute, and instead of my throwing all the questions at Bhaskar, I want to ask the audience. I want to do a poll and check. Anybody, any questions at this time? Yes?
So Bhaskar, any opinion or any statement that you have about the ambition of women? Because a lot of times, in my view, I think organizations are doing and have done what they can. But on the other side, you also have to have an equal reciprocation in terms of the ambition in the women. So your comments on that?
See, I have one general comment on ambition, which is a very strong personal view. We have encouraged people who have ambition for the corporation rather than for themselves. As in, my company ahead of me, of course you have to have ambition, but when my ambition is for the company to have a very big growth plan or whatever, and my contribution, irrespective of what I do, what I am an expert at, to that dream or that ambition, is where what we recognize. Okay, we recognize very actively. Having said that, your question on ambition, we, at least with this philosophy, we have found women to be way ahead on that part, which is aspiring for the company and what I can do for the company to achieve that, way ahead in comparison to their own personal ambition of growth. Doing it so that I may grow versus I think I want to belong to an organization which is globally excellent at design, let us say. I'm just giving you a spin. And therefore, let us, invest, get people from the best institutes, that kind of thing. And in a way, what you just said, literally thinking about everybody else and the corporate. But that is an ambition which the company therefore created. But I wouldn't be able to comment on whether they are less ambitious on the rest, on the individual part than men. Maybe it's true, but I wouldn't be able to, I don't have an opinion on the personal bit.
Hi.
Can you just tell your name and where you
Yeah, I'm Sharath. I'm from Schneider Electric. I think my question is, maybe it sounds like a rhetoric question. So if you are in a board of a company, men or women, they are of certain age and at a certain stage in lifestyle. The statistics you were talking about earlier in India Inc. in terms of what percentage of women are in boards is staggeringly low compared to junior management. Now, I don't have the luxury of seeing how board selection and all of that happens. It's based on where I am in my career. But the junior management staff that we are trying to promote within the company usually are, they're just got married or their lifestyles are different and they're making career selections either because of their own internal pressure or external. Why is the board not well represented from women's perspective? It's maybe an obvious question, but I just...
Why in the board they are not represented?
Yeah, why is there less percentage of women in the board that there actually is a compliance which calls out for a...
Yeah, I think... let me attempt at this. I think perceptually for 50 years at least since independence, I think the perception of a board was all male. Because business was all male. I mean, if you were to look at the entrepreneurs and the people who started companies, etc. And it's an India phenomenon. I don't know about the rest of the world, but it's certainly very strong in India, and it's only in the last 20 years that we've seen women's education and women's empowerment growing quite exponentially, and only now it's kind of gone into the board. So boards themselves haven't made an effort. If that is your question, yes, in the past they didn't make an effort. Unless you're a very evolved kind of board. I don't know of, I mean, if I were to take a Tata Steel or a TCS and some of the big companies of having consciously gone out and looked for women. I don't know if you have any such, I don't think.
No, I think like Titan, you were ahead of the compliance curve. You saw it as a business need.
Yeah. And then we learned that it was helping in many other ways.
Yeah.
And therefore we went looking for,
Yeah.
It appears, him a question to you specifically. Selflessness in women vis-a-vis men, way up, way high. Now, if that is the inherent characteristic, how does that impact a woman's career growth in the corporate world, where you have to let go at one point in time and be selfish? Bhaskar, you also may comment on this.
So, I think one of the things that I'm speaking very much wearing the out of the 4 hats, the gender hat, is that I think of course, we have strived, we have studied hard, we have, managed, come back to work after maternity, all the guilt pangs, everything. And there is an inherent need to excel in every role, you see. And I think women tend to take that need to excel a little bit more than the other half, right? Yeah, in all the domains. So you feel really guilty if your weekly provision list is not fully stacked up, or your mother-in-law makes a statement that, the drawing room could have been a little better. Whereas if the man is sitting there, his mother-in-law makes that statement, he'll say, go right ahead, mom, clean it up, no problem. So we tend to take ourselves, I think, at times a little bit more serious, because we want to be good in both those, and it's always this question of, however, I think, to earlier session, the earlier session where Apurva said that I think women are now realizing that their children are growing up pretty well, they're in pretty good careers, they have done pretty much everything, even if they've had a very aggressive career life. So it's not a question of the quantity of time as much as the kind of quality. And I think that awareness, it is important for us as a society, as a family, as a gender partner, all of that to create in the women. But demanding a growth for yourself, and it's a thin line between having that ambition for the corporate and then having it for yourself. And in having it for yourself, you're again doing it for the corporate. Harvard came out with some interesting research. It's called the diversity prediction theorem, which said that, the productivity of every group improved with the diversity that it had. And if you think of it that way and then say that, you have to be in various forums and have a good diverse mix, then you're doing good for the organization as well as for yourself. Maybe we need to take that spin with some of the women.
I can add a point of view again, the way it could work positively. I'm only looking at our experience. This selflessness, when it comes to work, job, and you have set yourself a certain goal on excellence, let us say, the women, when they are not empowered, they really get very upset. That is, and the men are willing to empower women more, they are more inclined to empower women than men. There is a certain trust that she will not misuse the power, both financial as well as, the overall power, the soft power, let us say. Therefore, but when they are not given that, look, I am doing this for the sake of the organization and you're not letting me. That is where maybe there is a trick or two there which organizations can figure out, empower them, and then they will blossom in that journey of excellence, get recognized, and then it will naturally happen. This I am seeing more and more, at least in our company, the behavior is like that. You are willing to give, it's not a long rope, but there is a certain trust that they are more frugal, they are more careful. I may be unfair to the men, but on all the ethics and all that, there is a strong bias, positive bias.
Yeah, one question I want to ask. I'm Deepthi from Schneider. See, women at the middle level, she may have a spark also, she may have aspiration also to move to the next ladder or to the higher roles. But, they may be working even more harder, and as compared to, not good to say that as compared to men, but, they always have this question, am I contributing enough to the organization? Is this role enough for me to move further? And that way they end up stressing themselves. So how a woman should deal with this stress and this self-question that am I contributing enough to the organization?
Well, I think there are all kinds of women in that sense who You know, I find
Any examples from senior leaders that you...
yeah, this kind of you know, feeling, am I contributing enough, and therefore feeling stressed about it. I find that when such a thing happens, I don't know whether men are, you know, feeling that stress or not, but certainly the women, when they feel that stress, they are open about it. They are willing to talk to their boss or to another peer or another senior in the company, and therefore, you know, they're more articulate about it, and therefore therein again lies the solution, you know, because they can get then mentored or guided and counseled properly. Whereas men tend to keep it within themselves, you know. Whether they get stressed or not, I don't know. This is something new, and I'm just looking at anecdotal evidence in Titan, where you know, a few cases of you know, having done a lot of good work and then finding that somewhere else something happened, but they're open about it, but they're not necessarily in the vertical in which they are working. Then the organization begins to solve that problem. I think I see more of, they're more demanding in that sense, you know, not just about themselves. Am I doing good work? You know, I don't know that whether my work is good enough. So, I think talking about it to others is the solution we have found.
Specifically from a board, I want to add on to that. You know, I'm part of a group called Non-Executive Directors in Conversation. And